On this week's episode, the chaos within the comic book industry. What's next for the Elder Scrolls? And it's time to take a trip on Avenue 5. All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows, whether it's the PCC Multiverse, the Pop Culture Cosmos, the Lakers Fast Break Podcast, Topic Apocalypse, or Inside Sports Fantasy Football. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. He's still the man who can't find any toilet paper for Pop Culture Cosmos. You got to check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com. Also his great book, Congratulations, You Suck. And check out his awesome podcast today, Topic Apocalypse. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
What's up? Just trying to outlast this whole thing. You know, it's frustrating. Yesterday I kind of got put into a deep, dark mental place. So I had to shut everything off and just play video games for a bit.
I don't blame you. A lot of other people are going through the same thing. It's really troubling at this point in time, what we're dealing with now and what's coming up in the future. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how long it's going to end, how long it's going to be before it ends or before we get back to some semblance of normalness. I know a lot of people are trying to target April 12th, the Easter holiday break, as being something that we can go ahead and start getting back to our lives. But as what's also been said, the virus could have other ideas, and there's still many people suffering out there, and there's many deaths and things of that nature. So first of all, to all of us, from all of us here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, our hearts and our thoughts we just really want to go ahead. Our hearts and thoughts are out for all those that are suffering from the coronavirus, who have family members, who have friends, who have loved ones that are being affected by this crisis. I know we're all going through it at a tough time right now, but please, if you can, let's all work together, social distancing, stay as much indoors as possible. Please follow those guidelines. It would help everybody out, and we can get through this thing faster and faster and faster if we all work together.
Also, be careful what you post to social media, because if you're trying to get people to be afraid and think that they're going to die every time they leave the house, it's not really helping, and I know you guys have the best intentions, but some people like myself, it has a taxing thing on our mental state. So let's try to, be responsible with information.
And you said this about our counterculture that we currently have, where so many people go ahead and they become those keyboard warriors, and they just feel like they can go ahead and say and do or whatever they want when it comes behind our keyboards. And they go ahead and send out those messages of anger or hate or fear that gets everybody riled up. And a lot of people take in that, like you said yourself, you've been seeing what's out there on social media and the internet, and it's very scary for you to go outside or you to do anything right now because of what's going on and what a lot of people are saying to make this bad situation even worse.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just people doing this, it's the news sites too. Every news site has a different statistics, and the difference in them are in the hundreds and thousands when it comes to infections and deaths and things like that. And it's just a lot of people wanting attention, wanting the clicks, wanting things like that. And there's not really a lot of consideration for what this is doing to people. It's not just people aren't just afraid. It's not just people getting sick now. It's people who are truly, they're losing their jobs. They're losing their income. They're really struggling. And when you put that stuff out, it's really it's going to create a lot of damage to their mindset. And that's not healthy for anybody.
No, we're just all trying to find any semblance of positivity right now in our society, and it's getting harder and harder to. I won't disagree with you. I'm someone who, like you, has a journalism background, and as someone who studied journalism back in the university, which we both attended, National University, got to give them some props. I just it's hard to see the way the media is shaping all this because they do have to report the news, and I get that and I understand that, and they do have to report where we stand now as far as the number of cases or whatnot, but they're providing us with very little hope beyond that. They're providing us with very little type of something that we can all latch onto, and that's hard at this point in time when you put so much negativity and so much, I guess, harshness out there. It makes it hard for everybody to go ahead and still keep functioning because we are tuned into the news because we want to know what's going on. And we see now that we have more cases of coronavirus than anywhere. We see now here in the United States, we have more cases of the coronavirus than anywhere in the world. We get that. We understand that now. But please, if there can be some type of positivity we can look upon as far as maybe some more stories or maybe some more news and information about people trying to work through this crisis together, things that are being done to help other human beings get through this crisis, no matter where it is in the world, we would truly appreciate it because we're trying to draw on more and more positivity that we can because we need all the positivity we can get right now. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult, but please, we're all in this together. We want to go ahead and try and get through this. And we need some type of outlet to get into it. And hopefully we here at the Pop Culture Cosmos over the past few weeks have been, at least for a couple hours of your week, maybe a little bit more, some semblance of some type of escape for you. And if that's been the case, we're truly honored to be so. And hopefully we will be so in the future.
Sorry. Yeah. Seriously, like we hopefully we're a good outlet for you guys. We'll always tell you the truth, but just do us the favor in kind. Like last night I had a complete mental breakdown because I'm just being drowned in coronavirus stuff. All of my favorite places are closing down, all the people I care about are struggling, and I can't take in any more information like that. So just please be considerate.
I hear you on that, my friend. And they can also turn to you coming up in the near future when it comes to your book, because you have been reading excerpts from your book, Congratulations, You Suck, to a live audience on social media and getting a very good response.
Yes. So I've been trying to kind of give people something else to think about for a while. So I've been reading my book. I was going to read it today, but there was, I had some things come up at work I had to take care of. So I will be live streaming tomorrow around 1:00. So if you want to tune in, just go to my author page on Facebook and you can listen along. I might rip those videos off Facebook and put them up on YouTube or Instagram in the future. But just for now, if you want to follow along, here's some story time, just tune in.
So you'll be reading that on Friday, the day this airs, correct?
Yes, Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Well, there you go. Look for today. If I'm able to, I'll go ahead and share it onto the Pop Culture Cosmos page for Facebook, so I can go ahead and get that extra stream. So give people an extra outlet to take a look and see what's going on, because they can go ahead and cheer up with a couple chapters, excerpt from your awesome book. Congratulations, You Suck. Well, we are going to be talking a lot of great subjects today, and we're also going to have a great guest on here in a minute, Sean Burns. From Now You've Seen It, the podcast available everywhere you get your podcasts, and also the upcoming Battle List. He's stopping by to talk about the HBO comedy series Avenue 5. Plus, also, Josh and I are going to be talking about what may be coming up in the future for the Elder Scrolls. I'm going to talk a little bit about Star Trek Picard, and also, Josh, a little bit about the Nintendo Direct Mini that came out earlier today that surprised everyone.
Yeah, it was a big mini.
Yes, that came out earlier today as we're recording this, to complete surprise to a lot of people. A lot of people didn't even know they were doing this, but it did have some information that Josh and I wanted to go ahead and talk about. We'll talk about that later in the show as well. But first, my friend, like we talk about, this coronavirus is affecting a lot of industries adversely. And one of those industries we haven't talked about in a while that is being adversely affected is comic books. And I know when I first met you, you were, a big fan of comic books. You're a comic book aficionado at that point in time. You were really, you're drawing a lot of inspiration in some of the articles that you were writing within the framework of the comic book realm. So I want to ask you, my friend, your thoughts on the comic book crisis that's going on. A lot of big comic book names are no longer distributing or sending out hard copies of their comic books because obviously they don't want to go ahead and either they're laying off workers because they're deemed not essential, or also the possibility of contamination with the coronavirus. But then again, on the end sellers as well, these comic book stores, these local mom and pop comic book stores, are not staying open because they're not deemed essential as well. And I just wanted to ask your thoughts on it because, first off, comic books are a great way for people to escape the realities of life that's out there. What has comic books meant to you over the years, and how sad is that for you to see what's going on with comic books?
It's really sad to me. I think about it like this. This is the danger. So Diamond Distributors bought up a lot of the other public or the comic book distributors back in the 90s, and this is what happens, right? When you create a monopoly on something. So this is kind of, it's good and it's bad, right? It's bad because a lot of these comic book stores aren't getting new issues, but then again, none of them are open. So maybe that has something to do with why Diamond Comics isn't distributing right now, but it also creates a good market for digital comics.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you surprised that Dark Horse said it's not going to release anything new digitally until they're able to go ahead and send out print publications again?
Well, that probably, I mean, I love Dark Horse. They're like my favorite publication because they got Hellboy and BPRD and Solomon Kane, things like that. But yeah, well, I wonder too if it has anything to do with maybe a majority of their market is in, paperback sales. So, I mean, if they're shutting their doors and they're kind of keeping closed till this whole thing is over, it might, it might not be costing them. They're not paying writers or anything. So it's kind of like they're putting things on pause unless they got to pay the, whatever deposit is on the building or the, utilities and things like that. But I don't know. This whole thing is so weird because look at video game sales, right? Video game sales have boomed. You go to any Target or any Walmart, you won't find a single Nintendo Switch on the shelf. Same thing with PlayStations and Xboxes. Even the games, like even some of I was at Target the other day, even some of like the low grade Switch games that nobody cares about were just gone. Like people are just ransacking shelves for video games everywhere. And if you look at that, like the comic books should be doing the same thing, right? Like people are looking for things to entertain them while they are stuck in their houses, and this is an amazing time for them. This would be a great marketing opportunity, and it just seems like it's not such a great idea to not even put out digital stuff. Like that seems like a bad idea to me, unless Dark Horse is kind of one of those people who's trying to not, much like myself, not go silently into that all digital future.
Well, I hear you, my friend. I know a lot of people are stubborn like that, and I don't say I disagree with you, because comic books in a print form is the original way to viewing these things. And to a lot of people, not only is it just nostalgic, it's just, to them, it's almost sacrilegious in a way. Would I say not? Would I say not? I mean, it's just, to a lot of people, they would just never go digital, even though Marvel and DC have pushed it hard over the recent years. They have pushed it very hard, their digital end, but they found a lot of pushback because a lot of people found it just reprehensible to even feasible to go ahead and view comic books within a digital framework.
Yeah, but I mean, look at what everyone's doing right now. Like this is a time you have to make changes, or you have to kind of adapt in order to stay alive. I would hate to see Dark Horse shut their doors for good because they don't want to print digital comics. Like this is not saying that they have to do this forever, but like, yeah, put full steam into digital comics, because you don't know.
Well, they just didn't want to do it while they can't put out, let's say, whatever they're producing. Let's say the latest issue of Hellboy. They won't put out the latest issue of Hellboy on digital until they're able to put out a print version of it. So that's basically. It's
probably because they make a lot of their money off of the physical copies, right? And the variant covers and the sketch covers and all the things like that. And they're losing that potential markup just because people want to read it right away. They want to read the digital copy. But at the same time, like, even if you have to take a hit for the month, get low revenue on something, you're keeping the lights on, you're keeping people employed in a time when America desperately needs that. So it seems kind of foolish to me to not do that, despite what the reasons might be.
I agree with you, my friend. People need to go ahead and adapt during these trying circumstances. And one way, if you're a big time comic book fan, would be to migrate over to a digital format. I think that's probably the way if you haven't done already. And I remember within, like I said, recent years, Marvel and DC, especially Marvel, were always throwing me email incentives, big percentages off the actual service itself, or buying comics digitally, you were able to get some big discounts over the tangible paper versions of comics. I mean, that's something that I think gets often overlooked. Something we've talked about from a digital format where you could always run sales on digital formats of video games, and you could potentially, in theory, get a lot of great deals on that because you're not spending the type of money on the packaging and all that. But we've seen, except for Steam, for a while, anyways, from PSN and Xbox Store and all that, they were reluctant to go ahead and do so. Now they're following the Steam format and running big sales every now and then periodically and gaining that general revenue off of that. Do you see now that people are going to have to go ahead and modify their lives, and especially if they're comic book fans, do you see them changing? And you also see big benefits for them financially in doing so.
Well, that's the only way these companies are going to stay alive, is by making those changes, making those transitions, putting more effort into ways of marketing that you didn't think were there before. I'm looking at it. We keep talking about this, but a perfect example is the gaming industry, right? Like, look at the email that Square sent out saying, hey, if you got a physical copy of Final Fantasy VII, you're not going to be able to play it until 3 or 4 weeks after the game comes out. I know Capcom just sent out another thing today saying that, hey, if you Resident Evil 3 remake is still slated to come out on time, but if you order a physical copy, especially if you're in Europe or whatever other country they named, you're not going to get your physical copy on day one. Then they didn't even give an ETA on when they might get it. So digital sales, you have to make that transition, and there's a lot of companies being smart about it, right? Like Square and Ubisoft, like they're putting out these massive sales, anywhere from like 40 to 80% off on games and things like that. And I know Barnes and Noble has been doing big discounts on books, not books, but digital books, because they want people to read. They want to keep their business alive. They're not an essential store, so they need to make the changes necessary to create business, create revenue. And that's the only way, because a lot of these places, I talked about before we started talking about on the show, is that a lot of the places that I care about, places that I love to go, they're shutting down. And it's not just, I'm hearing a lot of people going, oh, well, they're going to reopen once this thing is all over. Doesn't happen like that, right? A lot of these people are shutting their doors because they cannot operate. And that, in layman's terms, is going out of business. So a lot of people won't be recovering from this. So if we lose, Dark Horse, or we lose, God forbid, Marvel or DC, like, it's not going to be something that can be recovered. It's just going to be, they're going to have to start over from scratch if they do come back. So it's really dangerous to not adapt, especially, and it's also foolish, especially if you have the ability to do it.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, okay, let's say someone has the time on their hands to go ahead and delve into the digital formats of comics, whether they're a seasoned pro, someone who's very into the comic book scenes, or someone that is brand new to the comic book scene, someone, maybe a comic book noob per se, who wants to go ahead and peruse the world of comic books. Right now, there's no new Marvel movies coming out anytime soon. Black Widow's been delayed. We talked about that on our previous episode, the Pop Culture Cosmos, where we restructured in our way that we think would probably be best the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but that would be not taking place for a little while. So I want to ask you, my friend, what are some of what are some of the series, what are some of the comic books that you would say, hey, Josh, I got this Marvel or DC digital service I just downloaded. or Dark Horse, if that, or Dark Horse per se, where would you lean them? Which service, or actually which comic book series really intrigue you the most over the years? Which ones that you have really caught your interest? Which ones from beginning to end, as far as story arcs, really are something that you would point to that made you a comic book fan?
Okay, well, I mean, like I mentioned to you earlier, I have not read a lot of comic books in a long time. Like I used to really love them, but some of my favorite series would be Hellboy is really good. Love everything Mike Mignola's ever done. Same thing with, BPRD is not as good as Hellboy, but it's still satisfying. It gives you that dark Renaissance style artwork, and it's got the tones and all the supernatural stuff working for it. Batman Beyond is really good. Like if you were a fan of the show when it was on Kids WB back in the day, like it is definitely really good. And it's a lot. It picks up the story of Terry McGinnis after the comic book, and it goes like it's really good. If you feel like you needed closure and that episode of Justice League didn't do it for you, this is definitely a good place to pick up. Another story arc, I'd say Ultimate Spider. That whole Ultimate universe is really good. Ultimate Spider-Man's great. Ultimate Fantastic Four is, it's whatever, X-Men's whatever. But like, if you read all the things that tie into those, if you read the Ultimate Marvel universe as a whole, you will not be disappointed in it. It is spectacular. It's just great to see a reimagining of these heroes for a younger age. It kind of makes me sad that they destroyed that whole thing. Miles Morales' run of comic books is really good. Umbrella Academy is the one that I also like. Sin City is a good place to dive in, or a good set of graphic novels to dive into. Also something I really did enjoy was the Gunslinger comic books, the precursors to Stephen King's book series. So those are my picks. What about you? You thinking about picking anything up?
Well, before I go into my picks, because I've actually have two, I wanted to delve in with you and see your thoughts on that. How about anime in dealing with comics? I mean, I know they've dabbled and mixed together at least a little bit, and I know you probably had a chance to take a look and see and weigh in your thoughts on the anime combining with the comic genre to release some type of comic book series that has at least piqued your interest a small amount. At least piqued your interest.
Well, that would be like manga, right? Is what we're talking about?
Yeah, because then it evolves into manga. When you have anime and comics combined, it starts going into manga, and it goes from there, and it goes off into a direction that I think a lot of people might enjoy as well, right?
Well, that would be, Marvel did this with Wolverine and X-Men and Spider-Man. Like they created manga of them, and then they made a anime based on those mangas. I don't necessarily know if manga is having the same issue right now. I guess they're, no pun intended, but I think I haven't heard anything about that industry suffering. What really surprises me with this whole thing is why people aren't really pushing anime. Netflix has all these great original anime properties, and they're not pushing them. They're not really advertising any of them because look at this. We can't film things. Everyone's stuck. So why not push anime series out? I don't know why people aren't doing more of that.
True. But like I said, the mangas, the manga, which combines the great elements of comic books and anime, they've really combined those units together. And Japanese manga is just something that I think a lot of people are interested in, getting more and more in this country. In fact, I saw a YouTube video the other day of someone from Japan that was so surprised to see. I think they went to a Barnes and Noble and they saw so many different available mangas, Japanese mangas, just right there, available for the choosing. So that tells me you can go and walk into any Barnes and Noble store. That Japanese manga is easily available in a digital format right now on Barnes and Noble or Amazon.com, and maybe that's something you want to get into. But like you said, they've even had offshoots of that when it comes to Marvel comics. And what you talked about with Wolverine, et cetera, et cetera. I just think there's good combinations where if you like one series and you like to see it from a different format, or if you want to get into something else, some type of digital comic or digital graphic novel could be the way for you to go at this point in time as a diversion, as an escape. And the comic book industry, which is suffering so hard right now because, like you said, comic book fans have been so reluctant to latch on to something digitally. They wanted something like you've always talked about with your video games. You've always wanted to make sure you wanted a tangible copy in your hands. You like it the way you're as a collector. It's the way you like to put it on your shelf, things of that nature after you're done with it. Same thing goes with a comic book collector that you have. I'm sure you have lots and lots of comic books still at your house right now. Not asking people to go to Josh's house, mind you, but you still have lots and lots of copies of comic books that are available that you have because you like the hard, tangible feel as far as opening and turning the pages. People were always reticent to go ahead and do that. People were always reluctant to go to a digital format. And maybe now this is the time for people to start looking more into the digital realm for comic books. If they do, I'd say for me or someone who is not as hardcore into comic books and never have been, I've dabbled in it little by little over the course of the many years, but not been really someone that's stuck 2 feet full deep into it. I know recently, when my daughters were really into it about 2-3 years ago, right when we were starting the beginning of the show, I remember that I was going to the comic book store every month and taking them, and they were getting comics and enjoying, and they would sit down for hours and read until they found the love of Kindle and electronics and laptops. And need I say more on that? But I will say this, my friend, it was an escape for them, and comic books can really do that for children and for people of all ages, actually. But 2 places for comic book fans I think they should go. I think first off is Secret Wars. And the reason why I say the Secret Wars is a great place to start for people is because if you're really into the MCU and you loved what happened along with that took place within the framework of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Secret Wars, if you read the comic books right now, could be a key or could give you a little hint of what's to come in the future. Not necessarily phase 4, mind you, but phase 5, phase 6 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Secret Wars could be a definite possibility for a future for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I agree. And I also don't feel like Secret Wars was always kind of a cop out. Marvel has done this thing where they have just created so many universes, and I've admired them for that, like letting different artists and writers have their take on these heroes. They don't have to exist in a timeline, but then those comic books become successful and boom, they're branching out of that timeline. DC did it right? They had all these properties, and then with what's that big event they had, Crisis, right? They brought all of those universes together. Now they just have one universe, one mainline comic book, and they kind of reset everything. So you can pick up issue 1 of The Flash, and you would not be lost in the years and years and years of stuff behind it. Marvel, they tried to do something like that with Marvel Now, and then they ended up not resetting any characters. They just kept the same arcs open. So even if you like the characters that you pick up, you have to go back and read comic books dating back to the 60s, and that has always frustrated me. They had such a great opportunity with Secret Wars, but I think they kind of screwed the pooch, so to speak.
But for casual fans, I think it's something that they could better get into, and I think they will be drawing on some storylines from that series when it comes to the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At least that's what I think. I think they're going to go ahead and draw from it because it was a very popular series for them, for Marvel, and I think they're going to go ahead and take some from it, at least some steps from it, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of source material to draw from on something like that, but Marvel, again, people are feeling Marvel burnout. So if they were to kind of do some of the things they do with comic books with the movies, I'm not sure it would go over so well. So it all depends on where they're going with the MCU and how they want to do all that.
Now, the last series I would recommend came out very recently, within the past couple of years, and that is Secret Empire. Secret Empire is something that I know a lot of casual comic book fans really enjoyed, especially because of the fact that they were getting something different. And it obviously gained news because Captain America and his turn into, let's say, a dark side per se. It was something that was caught a lot of fans, either casual or otherwise, out of left field. And yes, it was for shock value, and the rest of the stories on it were a little bit uneven. But for the most part, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was something that it's easier for casual fans to get into because of the fact, like I said, if you're dealing with something that you're familiar with or some steps from the Marvel Cinematic Universe that you can take into the comic book realm, I think this was this was not kind of like a nice bridge. And I think that Secret Empire is something that if you really want to get started and get into something that's modern, that you could really get into to get started within the comic book realm, I think Secret Empire is not a bad place to go because it was something that they promoted and something that they promoted very well, and it has some semblance of familiarity people out there. And then, of course, like I said, because of the controversial nature of some of the characters, the fact that Black Widow played a major part, there were some things that happened there, and then also Captain America and his turn towards the dark side and the events emanating after that. I think it ended up on something that maybe was a little bit rushed, something that was the fans that are out there that cried from the internet to make some changes. I think that influenced the series overall when you look at it. But still, I think it's something that a lot of general fans could get into, especially if you're going into it at first before you really get into the comic book realm.
Yeah, I mean, I've never read it, so I'm gonna trust your opinion on this. But yeah, it sounds like it could be cool. There's also, for you guys out there, a lot of good series outside of the Marvel DC continuities too. So, there's a comic book out there for everybody, like literally for everybody. So don't be afraid to look.
Absolutely. If you've never stopped into a comic book store, it's mind-boggling, and you do for the first time. It's mind-boggling because you will see the walls from end to end covered with not old back issues, all recent current issues going on of all the different types of characters, all the different types of comic series from all the different brands that are out there. And that's amazing that even in an age where comic books as a whole, and we've talked about this before back on our show, where comic books sales were starting to slide as a whole, there's still, you could walk into a comic book stores and find all these different things and find something that you could relate to. My daughters could relate to several different types of comic books that were available to them. And so many others could you look and see, okay, this is for my genre. This is for my genre. The Star Wars comic, if you're just still itching for some Star Wars after the Rise of Skywalker, you could go into that. That tells a great detail about not only some of the older characters, but some of the newer modern characters as well. They have their own storylines. So you can look into that, but also many other great comics that are out there. They're by the hundreds in some cases when you go to comic book stores. So it's a great thing to see still out there. If you can, and you're interested in comic books, sign up today to your digital service of your choice, whether it's Dark Horse, DC, Marvel, or whatever digital service that's out there that supports comic books. I think from us, we think you'll be glad you did. What are your thoughts out there on comic books and the comic book industry that has really been hit hard by the coronavirus? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, coming up next, Sean Burns is going to stop by to talk some Avenue 5. And then right after that, Josh and I will be back to talk a little bit about Elder Scrolls, Star Trek Picard, and the Nintendo Direct Mini when we come back on the back end of the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. Just want to go ahead and thank Sean Burns one last time for going ahead and stopping by on the show. Truly cannot thank you enough for taking the time. And also check his shows out. Now you've seen it, available now everywhere you get your podcasts. And Battle List coming April 1st to all podcast outlets. Well, my friend, I wanted to talk a little bit about Elder Scrolls real quick. We just want to touch on it. because Bethesda on their Twitter this week not only mentioned one but two anniversaries for a couple of their older games in the series. So I want to ask your thoughts, my friend. I know 2018 E3 they had talked about Elder Scrolls 6 being their next game. Let's say everything was still hunky dory at this point in time and there was no coronavirus. Do you think at E3 they would have announced Elder Scrolls 6 coming out this year, at the end of this year, right around holiday time? That would have been their next big game after Doom Eternal?
No, they wouldn't have. We would have gotten to see more footage of it, and I hope that we do. Bethesda's still supposed to be working on. They're still supposed to be doing a conference, but a digital version of it. So I'm sure we're going to get to see some footage of it, but I don't think we'd see it at holiday season. It's just such a massive game. I imagine if the earliest we'll see it is probably 2021, maybe spring if we're lucky. But even that's wishful thinking. So it could be a summer release in 2021 or even next holiday 2021 holiday season. Just because I don't think they were even working on it when they showed us that video. They just kind of showed us a trailer. So I'm not sure that it was even the process had even started. Plus, they still have the space game that's coming out. So we'll probably get to see footage of it this year, but there's no way that it would ever. I don't think it would come out that soon.
Are you sure? Because it's been 9 years. Because the last Elder Scrolls game, obviously we've talked about it here many times on this show, Elder Scrolls Skyrim, that seemingly got ported to every major platform that's out there, and even minor platforms as well, seemingly. That debuted in November of 2011. So are you really, really sure? 9 years, my friend?
I'm positive we're not going to see it this year at all. I would hope. I mean, that's wishful. It would be really cool, and you guys can claim you heard it here first, but I don't think we're going to see it that soon.
Okay, because I'm just making an educated guess. I mean, 9 years is a pretty long time, so I'm excited about it. And it was nice to see, Bethesda honor a couple of its back Elder Scrolls game, including the 14th anniversary of a game you and I both love in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Love that music. God, it's still chiming in my head at this point. Feel like going, after you hear Patrick Stewart, who we'll talk about in a sec, about hearing Patrick Stewart, who was a major part of that game in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Just outstanding game. Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, obviously a very lauded game in and of itself, and was a massive success, and it got transported to every major system. So I ask you this, my friend, and we'll touch on more Patrick Stewart here in a second. And that is this: Elder Scrolls. Is Elder Scrolls still going to be the Elder Scrolls you think, that everybody thinks it is, that everybody has a love for? Do you think that 9 years is too long of a distance between versions of Elder Scrolls? Actually, it'll be more so. So if we go by your standards, it's going to be 10 years since the last Elder Scrolls game. Do you think that's too long?
No, I don't. I mean, I would have liked it to come out sooner, but no, I don't think it's too long. I think that this game is so endearing, and they've been pumping content into Elder Scrolls Online for so long that the community is not dead. It's just been growing in other places. So I think that when Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, it will be Elder Scrolls for a new generation, right? It'll be something that new gamers can sink their teeth into. It'll be a game for the Nintendo Switch, right? So younger gamers will get to play it. It'll be a game on the PC. Older gamers will get to play it. Casual gamers will get to play. It'll be a game for everybody, and it's one of those things where it's not tied to any pre-existing lore. Well, it is tied to lore, but it's not. It's its own story, so you can jump into it and you could play it, and it's literally like there's so many people I know, so many people from my generation just lost over 100 hours of their life into Skyrim in some form, and like I think my total time when I was done that game was about 181 hours, just because it was so big. And they have said, Todd Howard has said that Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be 3 or 4 times the size of Skyrim. So if that's any indication, it's going to be a massive game. So I think that people are willing to wait. Look at Final Fantasy, right? Final Fantasy Versus 13, that took 8 years to come out. So I mean, people are still, there are a lot of fans who are willing to hang in there for something good. But here's the thing, if this doesn't come out the gate and deliver, then there's going to be something wrong, because not only will they have messed up the Fallout franchise, but they will have messed up their flagship franchise, and that will not bode well for them.
And that's something we want to definitely focus in on is, will they make the same mistakes that the Fallout series, that they've made with the Fallout series and the Fallout 76, which was a big time failure for them? Hopefully not. Hopefully they'll learn from their mistakes and we'll go ahead and see a great version of Elder Scrolls. As someone who spent well over 100 hours on Oblivion and spent 30 hours on Skyrim before he got stuck in a bug that he couldn't get out of, I will say that Elder Scrolls has a great place in my heart, and hopefully, yes, I will get back into Skyrim before the next Elder Scrolls comes out. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that it will not come out, that it won't come out this year. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that it'll come out this year. I wouldn't put it past Bethesda that they could possibly bring it out this year. That's what I'm hoping for. But either the case, I just want a good version of Elder Scrolls. Obviously, the taste that was left by Fallout 76 is still there for a lot of people, and they associate Fallout with Elder Scrolls a lot because it uses the same type of technology, the same type of format, the same type of open world and whatnot. So I'm hoping that they'll make better choices with Elder Scrolls when Elder Scrolls 6 finally comes out. For me, I'm thinking still possibly this year, but I have a feeling you're right, and that they'll go ahead now because of what's going on, that they'll delay it for 2021 and a 10-year anniversary from Skyrim. What are your thoughts out there on Elder Scrolls? Let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. I just want to cover two last things before we head on out, my friend, and that was Star Trek Picard. I know a lot of people are now getting access to CBS All Access because it's 30-day free now. They opened that up a lot. It went from the 7 days to 30 days. So now people can check out the entire series on Star Trek Picard because season 1 just ended. As a Star Trek fan, I know you're not big on the Star Trek world, but are you familiar with the relationship that Data had with Captain Luke Picard, with Captain Jean-Luc Picard?
Don't hate me, but no, I have not seen. I've only seen glimpses of Star Trek with my uncle, and I've seen the movies. That's all my background is there. But tell me about it.
Well, I will. All I can say is if you get a chance to check out the first season of Star Trek Picard, because it already is number 2 is going to be coming on the way here next year, hopefully, if all goes well. It is a little bit uneven. There are some real high points and some real low points. Overall, I think it's a good watch. It's a decent watch. The last episode is very congested, but the one thing that it does offer that will please long-term Star Trek fans is especially if you're a fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation, if you're a fan of the relationship and the camaraderie between Captain Jean-Luc Picard and Data, which on the surface ended, in the 2000s with Star Trek Nemesis, you will get a closure upon that series as far as closure on that relationship between those two that is satisfying. But again, you have to go through an uneven ride and sometimes some sloppy storytelling in order to get there. But overall, it's a decent watch, and I do recommend Star Trek Picard. But yes, there are some things in there I probably would have done differently, but the last episode, outside of it's, once you go through all the congestion of what's going on with the other side stuff and all that, and trying to flesh out everyone's storyline, and unfortunately not doing a great job of completing any of them, the one thing that does get completed is the bond between Data and and Jean-Luc Picard. Now, what happens to Jean-Luc Picard is kind of far-fetched, especially the fact that they've already gone and used that trope for him once already in the distant past. But you know what? They did it again, and I guess it's for the best because they got to go ahead and have him come back for season 2. You can't go ahead and have a Star Trek Picard without Picard himself. So if you want to give it a chance, it's a pretty good watch. It is Star Trek Picard. Just be prepared for a bumpy ride along the way to get to the end goal, so you can see an actual closure of the relationship between Data and Jean-Luc Picard. Now, my friend, I wanted to ask you this before we head on out, and that is the Nintendo Direct Mini. Could you enlighten our listeners on some of the big keys, the big points of interest for fans out there? I know there's a lot of update talks on some popular games, including Ring Fit Adventure, which is sold out everywhere. The Nintendo Switch, like you said, has gotten some big sales online. They're sold out everywhere as well. But all the stuff that they're doing with Pokemon Sword and Shield, I know there's some DLC coming up. They talked about their Pokemon service as well. But I know there was some interesting points that you wanted to cover before we head on out.
Yeah, a lot of the thing they opened up with was something that people have been talking about for a long time, but they just haven't announced is 2K porting BioShock, right? The BioShock collection to Switch, also Borderlands. They announced the Borderlands Legacy collection, so that will be a release of Borderlands 1 and 2 and the pre-sequel. But from what I understand, these games, when they come out, they will only have one game on them, and then you'll have to download the rest through the internet. But you still, when you buy the game physically, you still get the download codes for it. Big thing that came out was Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So I mean, that was a really fun game from back in the day, and that's one that they are remastering. It'll be available May 29th, 2020, and they are also creating original content for it. So like an epilogue, they're calling it. So you can go back and you can play the game and then play a part of the game that you never got to play. Because with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, they picked it up with a new character. There's some expansions come out for Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order. Is a game called Shinsaki Into the Deep, which looks pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of Echo the Dolphin from Sega. Animal Crossing New Horizons, there's a special Easter version coming up, or Easter event coming up. Okay, so now they're talking about this game called Good Job. It came out today. It's $19.99. It looks really fun. Like you're going through it, you're helping your dad out the office, and you're trying to do jobs, and you're just messing everything up. Like just the animations look fun, the music sounds fun, the game looks fun, but I don't know if it's worth $20 to me. Next saying Catherine Full Body on Switch, so you can go back and play that. That game was pretty stressful.
Pretty stressful, pretty weird, pretty different, kind of fun at times.
Yeah,
and this game will never die. They're not letting this game die.
It's almost been ported more times than Skyrim. That's saying a lot. Like you said, Ring Fit Adventure, so that's out now. They just had a you can change the game. Yeah, it's a rhythm game, and now you can pick songs from Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, Zelda, King's Bounty. So I don't know if anyone's into that series, but they're releasing that in 2020 on Switch, King's Bounty 2. They announced a new Super Smash Bros. Fighter is from ARMS, and they haven't really said it's going to be released in June sometime, but they haven't given an exact date.
Plus, they're giving a free trial. Plus, they're giving a free trial for ARMS.
Free trial for ARMS. Bravely Default 2 is something coming out. So Bravely Default 1, if I remember, that was only released in Japan. I want to say I got a buddy who's really into that game, but they're releasing Bravely Default 2 in 2020. Still haven't given any like big release dates on that. What else? Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy is one of the most like janky games in the Star Wars universe, but it still is very endearing and fun. That came out today. You can play that. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer is coming out, but they have not given a release date on that. We all remember that from Nintendo 64. Panzer Dragoon, fully remade version of the Sega Saturn game is out now. You can pick it up today. Trials of Mana, one that I'm really excited about. They announced that will be out April 24th. And then, as you said, the Pokemon Sword and Shield expansions will be out by the end of June. And they also kind of gave some dates, tentative dates for other things. Like Fuser comes out in 2020. Elder Scrolls Blade is spring 2020. Warhammer 40,000, May 2020. Burnout Paradise remastered sometime in 2020, Saints Row, March 27th, and Minecraft Dungeons, spring of 2020.
A lot of good stuff coming there. Ring Fit Adventure, though, people laughed at that. When it came out, people laughed at that, as far as being something that Nintendo was going to go ahead and be somewhat serious about. But again, just like we saw back with the Wii and all the boards that were bought, and now they're all sitting at Retro City Games, from what I see every time I go in there, or it was just a full stack of Wii boards that were sitting there for the exercise boards. But Ring Fit Adventure, people need to take it seriously now because it's sold out everywhere, and they just added a rhythm game DLC to it. So people are getting more fun out of Ring Fit Adventure. It is a good workout. I've heard some good things about it. And if there's a lot of other great things that went on in this Nintendo Direct Mini. And thanks, Josh. I really appreciate you, getting everybody up to speed on it, because there are a lot of good things out. There are a lot of good things that are coming out for the Nintendo Switch. Right now, it is the best selling of all the units. It's hard to get any of the systems at this point in time because people just want to do something while they're trapped in, while they're inside. I should say trapped inside. While they're inside, but the Nintendo Switch is selling like hotcakes, and it's good to see even at this time that Nintendo is supporting its best-selling console. What are your thoughts out there on the Nintendo Direct Mini? Please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, it's been a great episode, my friend. Got a lot to talk about for our Monday show coming up. One last thing I want to ask you, my friend. I know a lot of people have been talking to me about it off camera and out there on the internet and all that, since I am somewhat affiliated with it. At some point in time, you and I are going to have to discuss Contagion and a movie that's not so near and dear to my heart, Outbreak. Going to have to go ahead and watch those, man.
Yes, we will.
I did watch Contagion again recently. Outbreak, yeah.
I got Contagions on my Amazon Prime, so I'll give it a watch.
Okay, and we can also talk about Outbreak too, because the reason why is both are hot right now because of what's going on with the coronavirus. They're both at the top of the Apple charts. So obviously, since a lot of other people are doing it and it is trending, it's what we got to talk about at some point in time in the near future as well. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.